Ethan had always been an outdoor enthusiast. The woods brought him peace, solitude, and a break from the chaos of everyday life. But on one fateful autumn evening, the forest became his worst nightmare. The sun had long set, and the trail he had followed for hours seemed unfamiliar now. His flashlight flickered, and a deep fog rolled in, swallowing the towering trees around him. "Okay, just retrace your steps," Ethan muttered to himself, gripping the straps of his backpack. A rustling noise echoed from the darkness. "Hello?" His voice wavered. Silence. Then a distant, distorted whisper. He whipped around, scanning the dense trees. His heart pounded as he noticed something. A tall, unnaturally thin figure standing between the trees. No eyes, no mouth, just a smooth, faceless head. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He stepped back. The figure didn't move. Then the whisper came again. Closer this time. His flashlight flickered violently before going out completely. Panic surged through him. His hands trembled as he fumbled for his phone, but before he could turn on the screen, something moved right behind him. He bolted, his heartbeat roaring in his ears. He didn't know where he was running, only that he had to get away, but the whispers never faded. They followed him, circling him, closing in. Then he tripped. As he scrambled to get up, he saw them long, spindly fingers reaching toward him. And then darkness. Ethan was never found. Lauren didn't believe in urban legends. She had heard the stories of Slenderman, but they were just that, stories. At least that's what she thought until one of her classmates, Jacob, vanished without a trace. People don't just disappear, she told her friend Mike as they walked home from school. There has to be an explanation. Mike shook his head. You weren't there that night. He told us he saw something in the woods. Lauren sighed. What, a shadow? Some creep in a suit? Mike hesitated before pulling out his phone. This is the last thing he sent me. He showed her a blurry image, tall trees, a thick fog, and something else. A dark figure barely visible, standing just beyond the tree line. Lauren's stomach twisted. That night, curiosity got the better of her. She grabbed her flashlight and went to the edge of the forest where Jacob was last seen. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying an eerie stillness. Jacob, she called out. Silence. Then leaves crunched behind her. She spun around, her flashlight illuminating only empty woods. But the air felt wrong, too heavy, too silent. Then she saw it. A tall figure standing perfectly still in the distance. Her chest tightened. She turned to run, but her body wouldn't move. The figure's featureless face seemed to pull her in, trapping her in place. The whispers grew louder, swirling around her. Then the world turned black. Lauren was found the next morning, standing motionless at the edge of the forest, her eyes blank and lifeless. She never spoke again. Jason, Rachel, and their friends loved camping. Every summer they would set up a small site deep in the woods, far away from civilization, just to tell scary stories and escape the city for a while. But this time something felt different. All right, who wants to hear about Slenderman? Jason grinned, tossing another log onto the fire. Not again, Rachel groaned. You always tell that one. Because it's real, Jason replied, his grin fading. They say if you see him once, he won't stop watching. If you see him twice, you're doomed. The group chuckled nervously. But as Jason continued his tale, a shadow flickered at the edge of the firelight. Rachel shivered. "Did you hear that?" No one responded. The crackling fire was the only sound. "We should head to bed," Liam suggested. "It's getting late." That night, Rachel woke to a low whisper outside her tent. She peeked through the flap, her heart pounding. A tall, thin figure stood among the trees. By the time she screamed, it was too late. Ben had always been fascinated by abandoned buildings. His YouTube channel was dedicated to exploring forgotten places, filming his adventures, and sharing them online. His latest find? An abandoned school in the middle of nowhere. "This place has been empty for decades," Ben said, adjusting his camera. "Let's see if it's really haunted." As he stepped inside, the wooden floor creaked. Dust hung thick in the air, coating the broken desks and shattered windows. His flashlight flickered, but he ignored it. Then he heard it, a whisper. "Hello," Ben called out, spinning around. No one. He walked deeper into the school, his footsteps echoing through the halls. Then he froze. At the end of the hallway stood a tall, faceless figure. Ben's breath hitched. He turned to run, but his camera feed glitched, static filling the screen. Then it was right in front of him. The footage was later found, still recording. The last thing it captured? A long, spindly hand reaching for the camera. Mark was a professional photographer, always searching for the perfect landscape shots. When he heard about a secluded forest with an unexplainable, eerie atmosphere, he knew he had to visit. Setting up his camera on a tripod, he captured the towering trees, the mist creeping between the trunks, and the silent stillness. But as he reviewed his shots, one frame made his breath hitch. In the distance, barely visible through the fog, a tall, faceless figure. Convinced it was a camera glitch, he ignored it. But as he continued taking pictures, the figure appeared again. And each time it was closer. Then the whispers started. Panicking, Mark grabbed his camera and ran back to his car. He jumped in, locked the doors, and checked his pictures again. The last image? A pair of long, pale hands reaching for his shoulders. Mark's abandoned car was found the next day. The camera was missing. And so was Mark,